We have a liftoff, 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Tower clear.
When, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary to dissolve convention in order to form a more perfect society, to break the shackles of ignorance in order to harvest the powers of the universe for the better of humanity. In the back of the human mind is an itch of instinct, a desire to conquer all seen obstacles. And time again, what is held as convention is destroyed solely from determination. A force of tenacity so strong that it not only conquered the ground, seas, and skies of the earth, but the versatility of the electron, the sheer power of the atom, and soon the vast expanse of the cosmos. As all of history has taught us, human progress in society and science is ever fluid, and will continue to change humanity as long as it exists. This is not the end.
Progress comes in many forms. Here we see political progress. During the second half of the 20th century, wide protests against government action, like these protests against the Vietnam War, became far less taboo and far more effective than before. Mere decades ago, the American public lived in fear of McCarthy's witch hunts. After McCarthy's death, however, the public was able to enjoy much more freedom of speech. And these particular protests led to the signing away of the draft by President Nixon. The second half of the 20th century was an especially good period for progress, particularly the 1990s. Things like the World Wide Web and Windows 98 were invented. The Human Genome Project, started in 1990, was able to fully map the entirety of the human genome, and the successful cloning of Dolly the sheep was achieved. This spurt in technological progress was caused by the Cold War infrastructure present for a while after the end of the Cold War. It generated huge amounts of wealth, which in turn allowed scientists to take out big loans and grants, and invent and discover many things. This chart shows the acceleration pace of technology growth. As can be seen, the 1980s and 1990s brought many inventions. But progress is apparent even under far less prosperous conditions, such as the Great Depression during the 1930s.
The Great Depression is not usually seen as a point in history in which society prospered, yet social and political advancement was groundbreaking. Government assistance was forced to be established, and the creation of programs via Roosevelt's New Deal provided the government with a foundation in which the people would continually depend on. It can be described as the first social reform, because for the first time in American history, women pushed to get jobs in the masses, and the government worked to provide for African Americans. Women were practically forced to work in the name of survival, but the inspirational speeches of First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt further reassured them that this was a turning point for the American woman. Women, most of whom were voluntary workers and not at all self-seeking, generally expected to find in their labor its own reward, Roosevelt wrote. When it comes to giving the offices of dealing out favors, men are always given precedence. For just now a woman must do better than a man. In fact, even though employment rates dropped, women saw a rise in employment of 2.3%. Social change even came to African Americans, though it was a longer and harder road to get there. Towards the beginning of the Depression, after many were forced to quit their jobs for their Caucasian counterparts, African Americans were refused certain aids and weren't allowed inside of various soup kitchens. Because of this, they banded together and created various groups such as the National Negro Congress and the Southern Negro Youth Congress. It was also because of this mass abandonment by the government that the African Americans voted Democratic the next election, which could be argued helped get President Franklin D. Roosevelt into office. Voting in FDR was a turning point for African Americans, as FDR provided incredible amounts of support for them and even had a, quote, black cabinet, which was a group of African Americans that gave him advice on various issues. Groups like Works Progress Administration gave jobs to unemployed African Americans, and the Federal Writers Project supported many black writers. Getting the African Americans into a workplace provided them with stepping stones to get into unions, which the Congress of Industrial Organizations helped further secure their place in the workplace and in society.
Our family goes back a ways, all the way back east before the French-Indian War. We did our part, defended our land, and were stabbed in the back for our troubles. The king ordered the proclamation of 1763, that we stay our travels and focus on appeasing him, that we should stagnate at the edge of the Appalachians. He denied us our right to expand and explore, but we fought for our freedoms and became a new country that was free from his power. The trouble didn't stop there. The way west was treacherous and fraught with opposition. If we weren't having to appease the natives, we were trekking across miles of wilderness for days on end. Many that attempted the trip underestimated the drain it would be on the resources and morale. Some turned back, giving up soon into the trip. We persevered. Through freezing snow and scorched earth we would walk. Families would stop along the way, laying claim to homesteads that could house the future generations. Cutting a swath across the continent, we spread in a great migration of opportunity and hope. Soon we were once again forced to stop our travels. The government gave land to the natives, who often tried to refuse our intrusions. Even our fellow Americans opposed our movement, limiting our greatness and checking the fulfillment of our manifest destiny. They said our prize would be that of vultures, bathed in a lake of blood. We ignored them, and risked death and jailing to continue on our way. We pushed past the Great Plains, pushed past our opposers, and found a new life in California. Years of strife internationally, coming to fruition in the gold mines where we found our fortune. The American frontier was no more, and in its place were thousands of miles of potential. Room for cities and towns, for families, secret treasures just waiting to be found, to be used. We've reached the edges of our great land. As the years go by, we begin to see the fruit of humanity's labor and struggle. Despite the constant barrage of obstacles binding humanity to ignorance, violence, and tradition, the wheels of time perpetually turn in humanity's favor. Whether it be the trials of human life that our environment poses, or the stagnant flow of the economy, whether it be hostilities and political opposition of the advancing of the unknown, or humanity's battle against each other, Cain versus Abel, brother against brother, and nation against nation. Progress is inevitable. Humanity marches on, and the darkness of the unknown is banished by the light of knowledge. The end will never come.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute.
The office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
And will, to the best of my ability.
And will, to the best of my ability.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.